Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology, and everyone, welcome into the program today. I hope that you are ready for the show because we have, well, a really cool one lined up for you. I know that you've been hearing a lot about AI, but I think today's show is going to lean a bit in that way, but in a way that I don't know, there's a lot of doom and gloom about AI. There's a lot of annoying stuff. I caught my own mother on Pinterest the other day looking at AI Pinterest posts, and I wept for her because, you know, once you kind of get into that AI picture generated stuff, it's very quickly becomes all that you see. AI is becoming very overwhelming. But today's stories, especially the first three, are really going to show you that AI is doing amazing stuff. It's not just cluttering up your internet with, you know, silly pictures and, you know, text that no one reads. No, there's actual important stuff that AI is going to do, and it is deserving of the hype that it is getting. So, but before we get into that, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including show notes. By the time that you hear this, they will be posted. You can follow along, or if you are busy, if you're driving, commuting, whatever you may be doing, hey, we're going to have it up on our site, and you can check out the links after the show. And Ralph does an amazing job putting the show notes together with relevant points and relevant links, and anything that we discuss will be right there. So it's all nice and orderly. So with that being said, computeramerica.com, that's where you can go to, you know, find everything that we do here on the show. So go ahead and give that a look. Now, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and just bring on Ralph, and hey, we'll have fun with it. So once again, he is our science and tech trends correspondent, and we love having him every single Friday. So Ralph, welcome back onto Computer America. How you been?
Oh, it's great. I'm doing well, and it's great to be back. And friends, if you're new to the show and new to our Friday adventures, what Ben and I do each Friday is highlight 4 recent articles that show us key trends and developments in artificial intelligence, which Ben mentioned, robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, agricultural technology, space research, physics, you name it. It's all open for us to check out. And most important of all, we're going to give you an oasis of positive news thanks to the world of science and technology.
Absolutely. And, you know, before we even get into these, and we can see story number 1 up on the screen, which we highly encourage you to check out the video portion if you're just listening. But before we get to that, Ralph, I just wanted your honest reaction on what'd you think of that spacewalk the other day? That was quite incredible that for, not saying completely untrained, I'm sure that they went through a lot of preparation to do something like that, but not by trade astronauts. And one of them was obviously an inventor in his own right, but also just really, really rich, like unfathomably rich. Ralph, what'd you think of the spacewalks? Like that was incredible, right?
I do think that's a big breakthrough. First time that non-NASA or non-trained astronauts, regular people, obviously trained, not regular because very wealthy in some cases, but the images that they provided, the kind of like GoPro images, I thought were astonishing. And it's also a real testament to the design of their spacesuits as well. So pretty interesting development. Who knows, someday maybe my kids and maybe their kids will routinely go into outer space for little like visits.
It'll be like a cruise, except instead of a cruise, it's like a 15-minute spacewalk.
Yeah.
It was very cool to see. And you're right, the spacesuits, I think, were definitely a standout. Just being like, we're used to seeing the traditional spacesuit that's so big and bulky, but instead, nice, slim down looking suits. And almost, Ralph, I don't know, I got the feeling like when you see it go out into space, you're like, that person's not going to survive with that little suit. But they did, and everything was good. So I don't know. That was a lot of fun that happened this week. But hey, this week we have a show planned for you. We're going to start with story number 1. And like I said before, the first 3 stories are AI centric, but they're different applications and they're all interconnected with that AI, but still doing very, very different and cool things. So Ralph, let's go ahead and start with story number 1.
Yeah. Story number 1 comes from techradar.com. Great outlet, by the way. Headline here: this new AI modeler can turn pictures into 3D sculptures in seconds. Now, timeout. Sculptures here is an unintentionally misleading use of that word, and I will explain that in a minute, but it's still a very significant trend story. So here we go. First of all, before the news, I need to kind of set the stage. The key trend reflected in this news feature has to do with multiple worldwide efforts to use AI to quickly transform 2D images into 3D assets or models. Now, those assets or models could be used to generate 3D sculptures, physical things. That's true, but that's where that headline was a little bit misleading. So, not 3D sculptures, as the headline suggests, but 3D models or assets that can be used in many, many ways. And we'll get into that in a moment. But wait a minute, time out. What are 3D assets? A 3D asset refers to any digital object created in 3 dimensions using specialized software. And these assets can include models for characters, environments, objects, and more. And they are widely used in various industries such as video gaming, virtual reality, augmented reality, film production, and even e-commerce. And 3D assets are often created by skilled artists and can be bought, and sold on 3D stock marketplaces. So what we're kind of talking about here, not to be negative, but here's AI offering, let's say, an alternative to human beings who've been doing this work. And these 3D assets that humans and now AI create can save time and reduce costs in production by providing ready-made models that can be customized and integrated into different projects. So that's the environment we're in right now. Again, human beings have been doing this, very skilled people. Now AI is coming along and, well, if you want to be negative, replacing these people or augmenting these people, or as I've said to my son, who's a music producer, don't fight it, integrate it. Use your skills and integrate AI. And I think that's going to happen in this field as well.
AI at the moment, it's a very powerful tool. And what we've been seeing in even radio, it has really, like Ralph, I don't know if you knew this, but one of the first commercially available products for AI voiceover work was actually for radio kind of like bumpers. Like the guy that comes on, he's like, hey, this is a song from 1973, top the charts, did this, did that. That's that was one of the first commercially available products for AI. It was that voiceover work between for radio stations. So when I look at this, and I think what your son can probably realize, and hopefully what a lot of people realize, is that this isn't going to replace everyone, at least hopefully, not right off the bat, but this really raises the floor. It doesn't lower the ceiling. Artists are still artists, and their techniques and strategies are still going to be good for very, custom and specialized, but AI at least makes it possible for the everyman to at least get a bare minimum level of result, and that's pretty cool that it raises the floor. There's still room to grow beyond AI, but at least for now. But hopefully it raises everyone up. It doesn't just bring everything down. So
great perspective on it. I totally agree with that assessment, that perspective. That's great. So with all of that set up, here's the news. The new stable, fast 3D AI model from London-based stability.ai can produce a 3D asset from a single 2D image in about half a second, which is a staggering speed compared to the usual rendering system, not only theirs, but the rendering systems offered by other folks. And we're going to talk about those too in a bit. And even if it takes more than a second and a single image to perfect the 3D model, there's a huge potential demand for this kind of tool in everything from architecture to video games, as we sort of alluded to a moment ago. Now, Stable Fast 3D produces a 3D model of an image that isn't just a digital representation. The resulting model's high-quality UV unwrapped mesh ensures that textures are mapped accurately onto 3D models. And this UV unwrapped mesh technique is essential for ensuring that textures look correct and undistorted when applied to a 3D model. Now, in the show notes, folks, if you're listening to us as a podcast, please come out to computeramerica.com. Get today's show notes if you're interested, because in the show notes, I have an optional tutorial side note I inserted about UV unwrapped mesh. And UV in this case is not for ultraviolet, okay? And you can read all about what this is and all these, where the terms UV comes from and what it means and so forth, and learn about the process and all the steps involved. And also I have a number of sources that I got from artificial intelligence search from Copilot that will give you more education on this topic if you're so inclined. But with that said, this one thing I want to put into perspective, a couple of things, is this isn't Stability AI's first 3D model maker. They've been doing this before, but it's much faster than their earlier SV3D model system, which took 10 minutes to do what they can do in half a second or maybe a minute. Wow. And Stable Fast 3D could theoretically make close to 1,200 models and variants in 10 minutes. Holy smokers. But, and here's what we're going to talk about, they're not alone. This is part of a worldwide trend, as I mentioned at the beginning, but the company can't rest on its laurels as other generative AI developers experiment with similar ideas. And for example, and I inserted this into the article, OpenAI's Point E model can make 3D models from text prompts, and Adobe has its own experiments that could be deployed to its Firefly service. And see also the embedded link and the link at the top of the notes here for vFusion 3D developed by Meta and Oxford University scientists. Wow. It's a worldwide trend, Ben.
And I don't know, I was just thinking in the middle of that, like, we've talked to a lot of people who've worked in the film industry and stuff like that, and like actually creating the art piece, and then, you know, like you were kind of getting into with the rendering, you know, that's where like literally people are spending, you know, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars if they're graphics designers to, you know, have the processing speed to get that done in hopefully minutes instead of hours, or hours instead of days, or days instead of weeks. You know, if you're doing, you know, the latest scene from Marvel and you have a ton of special effects with 3D modeling, you have to insert something like that, takes days or weeks to fully render. It's really incredible. And then, you know, you hear about this and what you were saying, how it takes, like, that's kind of the cool part. It takes just a second to take a 2D image, render it into 3D, and that's where this, you know, GIF kind of, you know, looks cool, is that it like almost instantly turns it into a 3D model that can interact and, you know, take force and, you know, be in a game. Like that just isn't possible. That wasn't possible before, even if you drew it by hand, to be able to do it that fast. So
pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah, no, it's an amazing story. I'm glad that you brought it up. So story number one, ladies and gentlemen, you want to go check that out. Very cool. And I can see why you emphasized model is a bit of a, you know, a physical model is not what we're talking about. So sculpture seems to be a little misleading, but no,
exactly.
You've made it clear. You've definitely made it clear. Yeah. So there's story number one. Let's go ahead and jump on over to story number two. Yeah. And story number two is also AI, like we were talking about. And, you know, AI, you know, you mentioned your son who's a musician. So musicians are worried about AI. Artists are worried about AI. Data entries worried. Like so many jobs are worried about being replaced by AI. Well, what if we replace scientists? You know, one of the jobs you think was AI proof. But hey, this is cool.
It is interesting. And again, I think, like we were saying about my son, it could augment. It becomes a powerful tool, not a replacement of people. And I think that's going to apply to this story. But we're jumping ahead of ourselves a little bit here. This comes from nature.com headline. Researchers built an AI scientist. What can it do? Subhead. The large language model does everything from reading the literature to writing and reviewing its own papers, but it has a limited range of if I could say it on Friday, applicability.
Applicability,
so far.
right.
Thank you. So there's a qualifier even in the subhead, but still the trend or the implications of this are pretty darned interesting. So could science be fully automated? A team of machine learning researchers has now tried. AI Scientist, which is the name of their system, created by a team at Tokyo company Sakana, Sakana AI, Sakana AI, and at academic labs in Canada and the United Kingdom. So this is a team of people from Japan and Canada and the United Kingdom. That's kind of cool. Performs the full cycle of research from reading the existing literature on a topic or a problem and formulating a hypothesis for new developments to trying out solutions and even writing a research paper. Okay. AI Scientist even does some of the job of peer reviewers and evaluates its own results. How about that?
It definitely reminds me of AlphaGo and the AI that played Go. To train it, like Ralph, one of the first things it did was teach it to play itself. So it didn't, so you didn't have to put in, 10,000 games. No, it could just generate 10,000 games and play against itself and teach itself. Very effective model for AI, for sure.
Yeah. And it's just fascinating. So AI Scientist, again, the system, joins a slew of efforts to create AI agents that have automated at least parts of the scientific process. So like the previous story, this is not something that's standing alone. There are other people doing the same kind of work and effort. One of the co-creators of AI Scientist noted, to my knowledge, no one has yet done the total scientific community all in one system. And by total scientific community, it's that whole range of activities, researching and so forth, writing a paper, and then even evaluating their own paper. It's a total self-contained process. So, but ding, time for a reality check. As the article points out, the output is not earth-shattering so far, and the system can only do research in the field of machine learning itself to date. Okay, we're at early stage. In specific, AI Scientist is lacking what most scientists would consider the crucial part of doing science. That is, the ability to do laboratory work. So, got to keep that qualifier in mind.
Yeah.
And AI Scientist is based on a large language model. If you're familiar with artificial intelligence, you can learn more about that. Research that term, large language model. And using a paper that describes a machine learning algorithm as a template, it starts by searching the literature for similar work. The team then employed the technique called evolutionary computation, which is inspired by the mutations and natural selection of Darwinian evolution. I love that. Isn't that something? It proceeds in steps, applying small random changes to an algorithm and selecting the ones that provide an improvement in efficiency. To do so, AI Scientist conducts its own experiments, not lab experiments, but theoretical experiments about machine learning by running the algorithms and measuring how they perform. And at the end, it produces a paper and evaluates it in a sort of automated peer review. After augmenting the literature this way, the algorithm can then start the cycle again, building on its own results. So, folks, it only applies to evaluating or researching machine learning itself at this time, but the implications are clear. Who knows where this is going to go over the next 5-10 years and beyond.
Yeah, AI, it really does have a fundamental problem, and I don't know how it's going to get around it, where AI is kind of like an improv troupe, Ralph. Have you ever heard of like the yes and kind of thing? You don't say no, you say yes and that's AI right now. It doesn't have hard convictions. If you tell it something enough times, it will integrate it and say, okay, yeah, cats and dogs are in danger, stuff like that. it will eventually say, yeah, of course they are, because I've heard it 13 times. I know that they are in danger. It's not true. And, it's not something that it needs to be repeated, but, AI will integrate into itself. So what I'm saying is I think it works for, machine learning because it itself is an experiment. So that's why I think it technically can do, experiments on itself because, it is the experiment. But we're not there yet. Like the article said, put a lot of qualifiers. Maybe one day, Ralph, maybe one day. But still, very, very good idea from the gentleman for, trying to get that ball rolling. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Story number 2. Story number 3. Let's go ahead and jump on over to once again another AI, but this one is making AI a bit better because Ralph, I don't know if you recall back when cryptocurrency and crypto mining was all the rage. And when I say all the rage, I mean like people were buying closed down power plants and starting them back up so that they could run crypto miners. Like hydroelectric dams were getting booted back up after 30 years because they wanted to hook up graphics cards to mine cryptocurrency. An incredible waste of energy and productivity. But my point is that processing power matters, and we don't want to end up in a situation where we are just burning energy because we can, because we want to. Instead, efficiency is going to make everything better. And story number 3, hopefully, is a step in the right direction.
Yeah. This story is flat out fascinating, tremendous trend indicator. Comes from tomshardware.com, and I have some other references too in the show notes. Headline: New memory technology unveiled that reduces AI processing energy requirements or consumption by 1,000 times or more. Subhead: New C, as in Charlie, CRAM technology gives RAM chips the power to process data, not just store it. And if that doesn't make your jaw just drop, I give up. This is such a fundamentally different deal. Folks, if you think about your laptop or your smartphone or your computer, your desktop, whatever you've got going on, you have a processor and you have memory, and the memory feeds the processor data. The data does its job, sends it back. It's a back and forth shuttling business. They're talking about RAM, random access memory, that can do the processing itself, all in one kind of environment. I don't know. It's just, I just think this is really pretty interesting, pretty profound. So let's talk about this. And Ben, you kind of set the stage for this problem. So the problem the world is facing today, artificial intelligence computing requires tremendous amounts of electricity, but new targeted research might hold the key to greatly reducing that. A team of researchers at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, hooray for the United States, has developed technology that could reduce the energy consumption required by AI processing by a factor of at least 1,000, as we mentioned a moment ago. In essence, they've created a shortcut in the normal practice of AI computations that greatly reduces the energy requirement for the task. So here we go. In current AI computing, data is transferred between the logic components processing it and where the data is stored, meaning memory and storage, or random access memory. This constant shuttling of information back and forth is responsible for consuming as much as 200 times the energy used in the computation part of the process itself, according to these researchers. To overcome this energy consumption challenge, the researchers have turned to computational random access memory. That's what CRAM means.
That seems so like underplaying the whole thing. Like you're saying, computational. That's like saying drivable tires. Like there's so much more behind it. But that's crazy.
It just stopped me in my mental tracks, to say the least. I just went, wow. And you also kind of think, why didn't somebody think about this before? But anyway, So we're talking about CRAM. Keep that in mind, folks. You can be really groovy with your tech geeky friends by saying, hey, what do you think about CRAM? Computational random access memory.
Have you heard of the new CRAM? Yeah, I have. I know.
So little warning here. What I'm about to read from this article is super geeky, folks. I don't pretend to understand it fully. I do like the idea, though, of RAM being able to compute all in one thing. The computational random access memory the research team has developed places a high-density, reconfigurable, spintronic, in-memory compute substrate within the memory cells themselves. I warned you. I told you it was geeky. And in the show notes, if you want to understand what in the heck is this all about, what spintronics, what are we talking about, come to the show notes at computeramerica.com. If you're listening to us as a podcast, check it out, and you can learn all about that. I'm not going to spend time on that. I also have some links and references to a variety of articles that will help you too. Going back to the story, though, using computational random access memory, again, CRAM, the data never leaves memory, instead undergoing processing entirely within the computer's memory array. This is such a dramatic and fundamentally radical departure from traditional computing. So according to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities research team, this allows the system running the AI computing application an energy consumption improvement, quote, on the order of 1,000 times over a current state-of-the-art solution. Hands down, super profound.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and again, something that's so necessary, because AI is going to stick around for a while, and to be able to I really do think it will, and to be able to make it much more efficient. And Ralph, like, honestly, technologies like these make it possible for it to go onto different platforms. I know that, Apple just had their event this week talking about putting AI directly on the phones, and, being able to do that hardware wise. Like, it's breakthroughs like these that, it's not, I'm not saying it's going to show up on your phone tomorrow, but it's what's going to make AI be integrated into every little device, and it's going to make a difference. So there you go. Story number 3. Story number 4. This is going to surprise you. Yeah, not an AI story, but a medical one at the very least. So Ralph likes to wrap up the show every day, or every Friday, with a little bit of uplifting medical news, because what's better than, and honestly, Ralph, to make it a little more relevant to people, the Paralympics just wrapped up. And if you want to see what medical technology can do, obviously the athletes themselves put in so much effort and tenacity, and what they're doing themselves, but the medical breakthroughs, the technological breakthroughs that are helping not just athletes but everyday people was really on display. So it was a lot of fun to see at the Paralympics, just how far medical technology has really come. But hey, that's an overarching view. As far as story number 4, this is going to help people who maybe don't think no good, because you think you're getting a little bit older, so maybe it's something like that. So let's get in story number 4.
Yes, story number 4 comes from scienceblog.com. Great story. The source of the information is the University of Rochester. We'll get into that. But here's the headline: Cleaning up the aging brain. Scientists restore brain's trash disposal system. I hope you're going to like this. This, for me, is very personally of interest, being a senior citizen and experiencing some brain degradation. Now I can give my wife an excuse for forgetting things and having problems. Now I've got an excuse. My waste removal system is not as good as it used to be. But I digress. We'll get into that here. Let's get into the story. But first, before we do the story, come to think of it, we've got to give you some background. And this I found so interesting. Ben, a lot of times you and I will say to each other, I didn't know this. This is the first time I've heard this. This was a big light bulb going off for me. The human brain has a specialized system called the glymphatic system that helps clean out toxins. The system works primarily during deep sleep and involves a series of tubes that carry fresh cerebral spinal fluid into the brain. So that's step 1. Fresh fluid comes into the brain. Step 2, this fluid mixes with the waste-filled fluid surrounding the brain cells, and then flushes the mix out of the brain and into the bloodstream. Additionally, the meningeal lymphatic vessels, these are the tubes, in the outer brain membrane also play a role in regulating the brain's fluids and flushing out excess proteins that can build up. The waste is this excess proteins. This process is crucial for maintaining brain health and preventing conditions like Alzheimer's disease. Wow. Lots of light bulbs are going off in my head as I discovered this. I got a bunch of sources here. Yeah, isn't that something? And there's a bunch of sources. You can learn more about this, links to papers and articles and so forth. If you come to the show notes, you can get all of that information. So, okay, with that set up in place, here's the news. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other neurological disorders can be seen as, I love this, dirty brain diseases where the brain struggles to clear out harmful waste. Aging is a key risk factor because as we grow older, our brain's ability to remove toxic buildup slows down. Oh, great. Another reason to be getting older.
For everyone out there who is sitting there and, you know, maybe you're on your morning commute or something like that and you think, wow, I got really bad sleep the night before. Just another reason to be worried about your sleep effectiveness
so
with
so
with
true.
this.
That is so true, Ben. You're right. However, new research in mice, good old mice and rats, thank you very much once again. However, new research in mice conducted by a team of scientists at the University of Rochester demonstrates that it's possible to reverse age-related effects and restore the brain's waste clearing process. If that doesn't make you just stand up and applaud, I give up. I love it. So going on here, in healthy and young brains, the lymphatic system does a good job of flushing away these toxic proteins. However, as we age, the system slows, setting the stage for these diseases, as we kind of outlined previously here. And once laden with protein waste, cerebral spinal fluid in the skull needs to make its way to the lymphatic system, that's that series of tubes, and ultimately to the kidneys, where it is processed along with the body's other waste. I had no idea there was this, waste removal system in my brain. The new University of Rochester research combines advanced imaging and particle tracking techniques to describe for the first time in detail the route via the cervical lymph vessels in the neck through which half of the dirty cerebral spinal fluid exits the brain. So they've mapped the roadway, if you will, the path for the first time. Isn't that something? One of the research team noted, quote, unlike the cardiovascular system, which has one big pump, the heart, fluid in the brain's lymphatic system is instead transported by a network of tiny pumps. The team then set out to see if they could revive the tiny pumps called lymphangions and identified a hormone-like compound drug commonly used medically to induce labor and known to aid smooth muscle contraction. Let that sink in. Commonly used drug to induce labor known to aid smooth muscle contraction is going to help in this process. The tiny pumps are lined with smooth muscle cells. And when the researchers applied the drug to the cervical lymph vessels in older mice, the frequency of contractions and the flow of dirty cerebral spinal fluid from the brain both increased, returning to a level of efficiency found in younger mice. Hurry up and get this out here, guys. I need it. I really need it. And one little comment. I think nature calls out the old, causes us to die by giving us crappy sleep at night so our brains don't flush and we just fade away.
Okay, that's uplifting, Ralph. No, it's
but there's hope.
Yeah, there's hope, and just being able to, I guess, kind of, and science is always built on what we didn't know and now we do know. I'm curious, Ralph, if this is going to be that early screening that that Alzheimer's is always kind of going for, that all these different diseases kind of go for, is how active is that flow of cerebral spinal fluid, how how active is that whole system, and maybe people with a lower activity level at the very least can help with early screening, and then of course finding a cure and finding a way to reverse it's important. But if this does turn out to be a key factor, then hey, that in itself is a great breakthrough, just knowing.
Isn't it something?
and that's really amazing. So I like that a lot. Thank you so much for, sharing not just, the AI stories, but of course the uplifting medical one as well.
Yay.
And everyone get good sleep, but also, hey, practice your cerebrospinal fluid transition that apparently keeps you younger better. So everyone out there who's following along, you can of course find those 4 stories, but then there are more. These honorable mentions are stories that Ralph includes at the end of our segment, because we try to keep things a little more concise here. These are stories that are not worse, they're not less. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there and you're one of these authors and you're like, oh, I only made it to the honorable mentions. No, it's okay. Your stories were great. We just didn't have time. And I really appreciate that Ralph at least puts these in here and really shows, not the bar, not the quality, but that there is so much more out there. I know that we present you with 4 different stories every week, but ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot more good news out there that Ralph sifts through to find you, the most fun. So with that being said, honorable mentions, they're just as good as any other story. Ralph, let's go ahead and give the nice folks the headlines, or they can head out to the website and check them out themselves. So headlines.
You got it. The first honorable mention of the 4 for this week comes from extremetech.com. Wonderful website. Headline: Man receives world's first lung cancer vaccine. This is research from the National Health Organization in the United Kingdom. Wow.
And judging by the picture alone, he did not receive this willingly. It was done by force. But yeah, please.
Yeah, the picture is sort of a stock image they use in the article. I don't think it was using a syringe, but anyway. The next one comes from the Washington Post via a post on MSN.com. Headline: Scientists may have found a radical solution for making your hamburger less bad for the planet. This has to do with all this research going on around the world. How can we make burps and farts from cows in the beef industry not emit the horrible methane and other things that are causing problems for climate change, because animal industry, sheep, pigs, cows, particularly cows, do contribute a significant percentage to global warming. So that's an interesting story, an agritech story. If you're interested in this, go out to the show notes. You can get the links and all that good stuff. The next story, the next honorable mention: new genetically engineered wood can store carbon and reduce emissions. From Science Daily. Really interesting story there. And the last one for this week comes from the UK's publication called Independent. Headline: Robots learn to feel human touch without artificial skin. AI-powered robot allows entirely new ways for humans to interact with machines. Fascinating story. Check that one out. And that wraps it up for this week.
Very, very cool. And Ralph, good job. It was a very, very good show. So, yeah, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more, you could, of course, head on over to the site. It's, very easy to do. And Ralph, I want to thank you so much for putting these stories together for us, coming on and, doing them with us. It's always a lot of fun. And ladies and gentlemen, every Friday, our science and tech trends correspondent, Ralph, joins us to, talk about things that are good, fun, and hey, it's Friday, you want to leave feeling happy. So I can't think of a better show to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, computeramerica.com. Ralph, thank you again. Everyone, have a great weekend. Do something fun. We'll catch you next time. Everyone, bye, everyone.